Scan is not a setup. Many of the traders, they are fascinated by scan, they collect scan, or they keep asking me about my scans. But scans is a very small part of a setup. Setup as a total idea for trading is a age which you create, and scan is just one part of that, because the setup will consist of your entry tactics, setup will consist of your exit tactics, setup will consist of how you size the trade, setups will consist of when you enter and when do you run the scan, setup consists of uh, the process which is used to find a trade after you run the scan. So scans, knowing scans is not going to help you understand a trader's total setup, and this is very important to understand, because today, because of social media and Twitter and all, many traders scans are floating around all over the place. In fact, I saw somebody who put together scans of all the traders on Twitter and made it available to people. Now, those kind of efforts, while commendable, they're not really helping you, because if you are just running a scan which you don't even understand and you just think that that is a setup, then you're going to make mistakes in trade. Like, say, if I look, if you try and understand what I'm trying to do, I'm trading a setup, or I have an age in trading a setup called momentum burst. Now, to find momentum burst candidate, I use certain scans. The scan is 5% of the setup, right? The scans which I use, many people have very erroneous understanding of those scans, because they're just uh, heard half a story, or they heard one third story. So they are all like looking at 4% scan. Now, I am not using 4% scan alone to trade momentum burst. I have a bunch of scans which I use in combination to find a momentum burst. It's not only that. When do I use the scan? It's very important to understand. I find my momentum burst setups in the first 10, 15, or 20 minutes when the market opens. You get my scan, you run it at the end of the day, and you buy a stock which is up 17%, and you're going to enter next day, you're not going to make money. In fact, you're going to lose money. And this is the problem with just running after scans. Scan is just the small piece which you need to understand. For any setup to understand and to trade successfully, you have to understand the full gamut of tactics and strategies which are involved in that setup. Like, if you look at my momentum burst setup, it's very important for the success of that momentum burst setup to enter early. Because if you enter early, then you can put a very close stop. If you can put a close stop, then the first day gain itself makes the trade highly attractive trade. Now, if you try and run the scan at 3 o'clock and enter at 3 o'clock, you're not going to, or if you try and run the scan at the end of the day and do it, it's not. So the key strategy or key tactics in that particular setup is to try and enter a momentum burst as early as possible. So I'm not just using a scan of 4% or dollar breakout to do it. I'm also using another tool, which is trade ideas, to find some of these candidates, or I'm doing some work in the pre-market. Now, entry tactic is just one part of the setup. Sizing of the trade is another part of the tactic. How you size the trade so that you can maximize the profit potential of that trade is a very important piece, which is missing in many of the hunt for just scans. Because how you structure the trade is going to determine whether you're going to make big money out of that particular thing, or you're just putting 5% of your account in that particular trade. Are you going to making money using momentum burst? So how to size that trade? And if you size it large, then your risk is much larger. So how do you de-risk your trade? You size larger and de-risk. That's a strategy. That's a tactic. Similarly, exiting is a tactic. Now, exiting is where most of the people have a lot of trouble, because entry is relatively easy. Most people can enter a trade. Exiting is more an art. And you will see that, look, and traders have most problem with exiting, because either they exit too early or they exit too late, and then they don't make money on the same setup which somebody else is trading with a different exit tactics. So exit tactics are also important in it. The other thing is really where you are going to put an initial stop, how fast you are going to move an initial stop, how are you going to progress your stop. That is also determines whether a setup idea is going to work or not work. What kind of stocks you are going to take these setups on, or what kind of stocks when they show up in the scan you are going to select, and why you are selecting certain and why you are not selecting certain kind of stocks is going to determine your win rate. So even if you have the same scan as some other trader, that trader might get 70% win rate and you might not get even 40% win rate because you're not using quality control criteria to select a particular trade. So that is another factor which come into play in selecting these kind of stocks. The market phase is also going to determine how the same setup idea is used. Under certain market conditions, I'll allow my setups to run for a couple of weeks or months. Under different market condition, same scans I will use, but I will get out of a trade in 3 to 5 days. Or sometimes I will get out even faster because the market conditions are different. So understanding market condition is going to determine how the same scan is used differently. Okay. So these are all tactics which make a setup work, and that is how a trader develops an edge, because each of these smaller nuances and tactics and a bundle of these nuances and tactics builds an edge on top of each other. So you might, by just having the setup idea, you are just part of the edge. You fine tune the entry techniques, you increase your edge. You fine tune the exit techniques, you increase your edge even more. You run the scan on a right priced stock, you're going to increase your success ratio much more, especially when you're trading momentum burst. If you trade momentum burst on a lower price stocks, your win rate is going to be lower. You trade them on a higher price stocks, your win rate is going to be higher. Now that is a nuance which you may not just understand by just looking at a scan. So whenever you're tempted to just become a scan collector and just like anything, you look and there is just, oh, this guy is running this scan and I got it. Okay, you got only 5% of the picture. This is true for every trader I know of. Their scans are irrelevant. Their tactics, set of tactics which they use around that scan is most important. So try and understand the whole concept, or what is that edge which this trader, because ultimately this game is about developing an edge. So what is the edge this person has built around a scan is very important, and to understand the different facets of that edge is what is going to make that scan work for you. Otherwise, scan is just a tool to find the first cut of candidate to consider for trading, as far as I am concerned. And as far as I know, most of the other traders, it is the same thing. And if you don't understand this, you will be continuously disappointed by any scan which you find in the market.